Welcome to the Northern Utah NTMA Machinist Apprenticeship Training webinar series. Thank you for participating in our apprenticeship program. In this webinar, titled U.S. Department of Labor Machinist Apprenticeship Program Submission Overview, Paul Harbath will describe the submission requirements for the Department of Labor approved Journeyman Machinist Apprenticeship Program. He will review each of the forms that you will need to submit and give you tips for filling them out. If you have any questions about the Northern Utah NTMA Apprenticeship Program, please contact any of these people. Now let's join Paul as he presents the U.S. Department of Labor Machinist Apprenticeship Program Submission Overview. To review the timeline that we've been using all along here, we're going to go through the Department of Labor submission checklist. We're going to sponsor the data collection sheet. We're going to talk about other forms, and we're going to talk about completing your standards document, and then at the end we can answer any questions. I haven't seen anything back in the question box. Can somebody enter something in the question box just to make sure that you guys can hear me? Earlier, I did a webinar earlier, and we were having trouble with the GoToWebinar interface. So I just want to make sure somebody can hear me. So if you would do me a favor, just enter into your question box anything, a yes, no. Okay, perfect, Rick. Thanks. That's all I needed. Okay, let's go on here. After our initial webinar about the Department of Labor submission, we submitted our first standards document. The Department of Labor gave us feedback on our submission, and because of that feedback, we've added some modifications to the original webinar. The modifications start at 23 minutes and 43 seconds in this webinar. If you want to learn about the changes only, go to 23:43 and follow the instructions. The timeline that we've been talking about all along here started back in 10/8. We are now down to the 210, which is today's submission to the Department of Labor, and talk a little bit about mentoring. After that, we will submit to the Department of Labor, and I'll explain this as we go. If there's any additional support we need, we can add that at any time. We've estimated that the Department of Labor will take about 2 months to approve. The information that we're getting back from both Travis and Helen sounds like it may be much faster than that. So I guess we'll find out. I think we're pretty conservative that we should know by the 1st of April. After that, then we're going to do something where we'll explain more about how the whole hiring process works. So how you all will get successful candidates. I'll probably do that, I would imagine, as a webinar, and then somewhere around June, we will start the process of hiring apprentices as needed. Okay, the first thing we have is the checklist itself. So this is the information that you need to submit. Let me give you kind of an idea of how this is going to work today. What I did is I went over and I worked with Travis, and we created the submission for LeanWorks. And as we created it, then we said, okay, here's what you got to fill out. Here's how it needs to be filled out. And what I'm going to show you is what we chose to do. And I'll explain to you in the end. I'm going to send you a blank form. If you choose to do the same thing that we did, basically you just change your name from the sponsor to your name, and it's ready. As far as the bigger form that we need to fill out. So this checklist tells you what needs to be included in the package to the Department of Labor. There needs to be a sponsor data collection sheet, and I'm going to go over all of these here in just a minute. There needs to be a sponsor data collection sheet. There needs to be the Department of Labor Employment and Training Administration sheet. There needs to be your on-the-job training form, the one that you designed with Travis earlier. There needs to be an example of classroom, and I'll show you what that is. Then the big document that we have to fill out is the Department of Labor Standards of Apprenticeship. And then finally, if you're expecting to have 5 or more apprentices at any given time, you would need to fill out the affirmative action plan. Okay, so let's go in and talk about each one of these in detail. First, we have the sponsor data collection sheet. The sponsor data collection sheet is just simply a form that needs to be filled out. As we go through this whole process today, whenever I say sponsor, that means your company. So at LeanWorks, I will fill out one of these forms. And so under sponsor name, I will put LeanWorks, and I will fill out the rest of the information from the point of view of LeanWorks. So there really isn't much on here that's difficult, so you shouldn't have any problem filling that out. And these forms have been sent to you in the past. I will include all the forms in an email by Friday that have all of these forms included in them as well, so you'll have another copy. Then there is the form that you will submit with each apprentice that you would like to become part of the program. That's what this Department of Labor Employment and Training Administration form is. It's the form that you will submit for each apprentice you would like to submit. So in the beginning, you can fill out the information that applies to your company if you would like. I know you can't read this, but about halfway down it says sponsor information. You can fill that information out if you would like, but you don't have to. So what we are going to do is we are just going to submit the blank form with our package just so the Department of Labor knows this is the form we will use. And then when you start actually getting apprentices, then you would submit one of these for each apprentice. The on-the-job training. This was the part that Travis helped us all with way back in the beginning, and that is how are you going to track the training. At this point, you just need to send the complete set of forms for the entire time period of the apprenticeship, which would be 4 years. So you can see for us, the form is exactly the same each year. And so what I've done is in this visual here, I've shown you that I will include 4 sheets as I go through the submission. I will include 4 copies, one for year 1, one for year 2, and one for year 3 and 4. They will be blank, and all it is here's the format we are going to use. So that would be the format you agreed on with Travis. The typical classroom example. This is what we went over last time. There's 572 hours required of classroom training. Most of the time, now you have other choices, but most of the time you would get this done by either using your local community college, ATC, or you could use the NTMA if you prefer. But you need to send them an example of what you're going to use. Travis and I actually had a little bit of discussion. I'm not sure how we decide. If I decided I wanted to use the Davis ATC, not exactly sure how that works. But for now, what you need to do is just put the typical course that you are planning on using. And then if there's any changes, we'll know about that here soon. Now the big document. So this is the one, I'm not sure how many pages it is, but it's several pages. And this is the one that describes your standards for apprenticeship to the Department of Labor. So when you look at this document, the one that Travis sent out, you will see a bunch of highlighted yellow items. Those highlighted yellow items were highlighted by the Department of Labor. And what they're telling you is anything that's yellow, you either have to complete it, fill it out, modify it to your liking, or delete it completely. And you'll see as we go through, we're going to take all of the yellow sections throughout the document, and we are going to show you what we did, what LeanWorks did. Again, if you choose to do that, it will be very simple for you to make your name the sponsor, and you can use all of these changes as is. So let's, one of the things also down there at the bottom, I would plan on an hour, hour and a half to spend time on this document if you really want to understand it. For those of you that are familiar with Reed and LeanWorks, I created this. I'm going to give it to Reed, and I'll give it to him for a while, several days, to make sure he's comfortable with everything in there before we actually submit it. I'll talk more about that later. So the first thing you need to do, I'm going to back up just a second. So you see the yellow over on the right there, see where it says name of sponsor, city and state, all that. This is just the blown up portion of that where I've included LeanWorks. So I can see, obviously, I have a typo in there. It should just say LeanWorks Inc. and not Inc. twice. Ogden, Utah, for the occupation of machinist. The ONET SOC code would be that number, and the Rapids code is that number. The same. It will be the last three things there will be the same for all of us. The only thing that would be different is put your own name in there. So that covers the yellow portion of the front page with the exception of one thing. And let me go back again here. If you notice up at the top, it says, please remove header before printing. The document you will get from me has already taken that away, so you don't need to worry about that. So your name goes here. These three things, you can just use what the existing document I send you says. Okay, now we've gone through and we reviewed everything. I will send the blank copies of all of this out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and explain the interpretation of and the interpretation of what those things are. And I see Travis is on now. So Travis, if I say something and you go, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense, just jump in. I will explain our interpretation of these modifications so you can decide whether or not that's something you want to do or you want to do it differently. Realize you can change anything in this document you want based on your needs. It's entirely up to you. Also remember, there's no cost to submit to the Department of Labor, and you can resubmit at any time. So the philosophy that I'm taking at LeanWorks is I've done a reasonably comprehensive review. Reed will do that review again. We're just going to submit it. We're planning on probably the 19th. We will send our submission in, and we're going to let them tell us, wait, you can't do that. As long as we're comfortable with what we've said, we're going to let them tell us. If they say anything, obviously we'll go back and forth till we get the changes resolved. If not, we're ready to go. So that's kind of the approach that we're taking. Okay, there are a set of definitions in the document. There are several definitions that are yellow highlighted. Again, you have the option to remove them, modify them, or leave them in. We've chosen in all of them that are yellow highlighted, which are career lattice, certificate of training, competency-based occupation, interim credential, job corps centers, time-based occupation, and Youth Build USA. We've decided to remove those definitions, and we have no additional definitions. So as you go through the definition section and you see that, the yellow highlighted ones have all been removed. The rest have been left alone with no additional ones. Section 1 of the document. There is a whole section, and in fact, I think it's the largest yellow section in the document that refers to an ATC. ATC, in this case, is an apprenticeship and training committee. They, in fact, I think you can see there at the bottom, as I go through these, the little highlighted text that's kind of looks like it's been cut out, that is the remaining text in section 1 of the document. So as I'm talking here, you can read that, but what they're going to tell you is that they would encourage you to have an apprentice training committee at your organization. You have the choice of doing that. You can if you want to. For us, because of our size, we really have no need to do that. So most of the yellow section has been modified and all of it has been removed. The only thing remaining in section 1 is this paragraph. So you can choose to do something different if you want, but that's what we decided. Section 4, which is the next yellow section. Define the minimum age that you are willing to make for an apprentice. We set that at 18 years. You can choose to do something else if you would prefer, but we chose 18 years of age. Section 4, we've modified Section 4C to show what is listed here, which means much of the yellow is gone. The rest of it has been modified to this, and we've eliminated sections D and E. So this is the section C, D, and E remaining in Section 4 of the document. Section 5 of the document has been modified to have this sentence is all that's left, and it's about selecting apprentices. So again, these are very simple changes. You know, you can go back and in fact, I will make sure and send you an original yellow copy as well, so you can compare the two if you would like, to see if there's anything that you feel like you do need to keep in. Section 7 of the document, we've modified Section 7 to say that there is a minimum of 1 mentor per 5 apprentices. The 1 mentor for 5 apprentices means you have to have someone in the shop that is mentoring these people. The Department of Labor actually uses the language journey workers, and I have converted it in our case to mentors, because there may be other people besides journey workers that are helping these people understand how to do things. And I kind of don't want to really commit myself to saying that everything has to be done through a journey worker in some cases. So again, that's up to you. The whole concept of a mentoring is that along in the program, they need to have someone there that can help them understand the more complicated things, whatever those are. The way we're setting it up is they will have a mentor every week. That mentor starting out is me, because we're talking about basic safety and basic things like that. So even though I don't understand machines, I'm the mentor in the beginning. So kind of the reason that I left it in the language of mentor as opposed to journey worker. But we do need to have, for every 5 apprentices we need to have 1 designated mentor. They specifically ask in Section 9 about a probationary period. We've just chosen 3 months. You can choose, there are some minimum, I think it was maximum requirements, I believe. Can't be more than 25% of the 4 years, I believe. So you can, if there's something different you want to do there, don't really see any issue with going with anything with 90 days. There's no real, since we're an at-will state, there really isn't any need, it seems like, to even have this. So anyway, we chose 90 days. You can choose to pay for the time your apprentices are at school. That's what this is talking about, the related instruction. We have chosen that we will not pay for the people's time at the school. Now we are reimbursing them for their tuition, but we are not paying for the time they are at school. So you can make that decision here. So we've modified this section to say that we will not pay for hours spent attending related instruction classes. The Department of Labor indicated that it would be good to have interim certifications, meaning that there would be certifications given regularly as opposed to waiting to the end of the 4 years. We've chosen to not do that, so we've eliminated the interim certificate of training. In reality, we will do that here. It just will not be part of our Department of Labor submission. So we are planning on doing interim certificates, but just not committing to do it through the Department of Labor. So that's the way we've handled that one. There is a section about complaints. What happens if there's some sort of a disagreement? Travis and I talked about this yesterday, and basically we said, we're just going to put our name there because that's the way we handle disagreements. If something's going on and the employee can't has a problem with something that's going on, it's a normal part of our business. That's what we deal with. So we want the official decider of all of how to resolve problems to be us. So when I have down there, put sponsor name here, you would put your company name there if that's what you choose. Now you could, I suppose, choose to have third parties or who knows what, but we've just said that's just a normal part of business, and so we will do any conflict resolution here, and we will be the decision makers. The last thing, that's really the entire document. We just went through the entire, I think it's about 10, 12 page document, and all we talked about were the yellow items. So that's where you're going to want to spend your 90 minutes. If you agree with the way we've modified the yellow items, the document that I send you, you will just need to change your name as the sponsor. Then you're going to want to sit down, take a few minutes and go through it and make sure if there's any other concerns you have about the document that you make any modifications. But the yellow highlighted modifications, which the Department of Labor suggested, all of those have been addressed in those few slides that we just went over. So the last document that the Department of Labor is requesting is an affirmative action plan if you expect to have more than 5 people in the apprentice program at any time. So what we've chosen to do here is we've chosen to not even submit this sheet, because you do have the choice to not submit it. It is optional, because we are expecting we will not have 5 at any given time. I will include a copy of this document and you can read it. Travis, when we were sitting together yesterday, read through it, and it doesn't seem like it really commits us to do any more than we already are doing. So again, you can make the choice, and this is again where I put down there, remember, you can always change your mind. So you can go either way. You can say, I'm just going to go ahead and submit it, and if I change my mind, I can go back and say, we're not going to do that. Or you can not do it and go back later and say, okay, now I would like to submit this document. So you can always change your mind. So I know this seems like it was pretty quick, but honestly, when we sat down and did this, there's really not that much to the submission. So you would go all the way back and start with the checklist that we talked about, and then you just walk down through, and that one document, the Standards of Apprenticeship document, is the one that's going to take the time. And I've shown you what we're doing, and I will give you a copy of that, and then you can take it from there. But it's really not that complicated. It's very open, very vague, so you're really not committing yourself to doing anything that seems unusual to us when we did the review. So that's the review of everything. I do want to remind everybody that if you haven't paid your fees for the NTMA, you won't be able to participate in the apprenticeship program.
In our first submission to the Department of Labor, we received feedback from them about our submission. The next few slides will describe the minor changes they recommended. There are 3 clarifications that the Department of Labor made after our first submission. 1. Submit your standards in Word format. 2. There is an Appendix A form that we need to use. 3. There are clarifications to the journey worker apprentice ratio at your company. The Department of Labor would rather you submit your standards in Word format rather than a PDF. They are concerned about the final formatting and indicated that if the formatting is incorrect, it will delay approval. So submit your standards in Word format and sign the final page and send that page only in PDF format. When the document is approved by the Department of Labor, they will send you back a PDF with your signatures and the Department of Labor approval for your records. When we originally created the standards package, we did not realize that there was an Appendix A. You can get a blank copy of Appendix A From Helen McNally, the Apprenticeship Coordinator. Helen's contact information is listed on the last slide of this presentation. Fill out Appendix A and attach your educational plan and on-the-job training form to the appendix. Submit this as part of your standard submission. Part of Appendix A will be the apprentice wage schedule for your company. Let's talk more about that. The apprentice wage schedule is the minimum wage you expect to pay the apprentice throughout their apprenticeship. Keep in mind that this is a minimum only and that you are not required to pay anything other than that minimum at any given time. The wage rate you indicate in Appendix A is the minimum wage you expect to pay at the end of the 8,000 hours of the apprenticeship training. Our recommendation is that you use your apprenticeship starting wage as the minimum final wage. By doing this, you give yourself maximum flexibility with pay increases. You could actually never give the apprentice a pay raise and still meet your apprenticeship standards. Of course, you can always pay the apprentice more than your standards rate. Let's clarify the journey worker to apprentice ratio. During the apprentice's training at your company, you must provide a journey worker as a mentor/trainer. So for every registered apprentice you have, including any employees that have been working for you and would like to be part of the program, must have a journey worker machinist available to them as a mentor. So if you choose to have a ratio of 1-to-1, you will only be allowed to have one registered apprentice at any given time. If you choose to have a 5-to-1 ratio, you can have 5 apprentices for every journey worker mentor. Keep in mind that you define what a journey worker is for your company, since you may not have Department of Labor approved journey workers. If you choose more than a 1-to-1 ratio, your submission will need to be reviewed and approved by the Department of Labor National Group. There have been companies that have abused this in the past and did not give the apprentice adequate time with a journey worker mentor. Just be ready to justify that you will give your apprentices time with a seasoned professional machinist as part of their training. Finally, just a reminder that you can change your standards at any time, but do realize that the changes can take up to 90 days for approval. That finishes the update from our first submission, and we will go back to the original webinar.
Okay, so we have time for questions, and there's contact information, which is the same slide we had last time. So Travis, one of the first questions here, Brett's asking about rapids. So I think that's back. Let me see if I can find it here. I think it's back on the original slide, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, right here. So Travis, do you know what the rapids code represents?
I don't. The Department of Labor talks about rapids as a software system that they use to keep track of all of this. And so I actually think it's just a code that goes into a database so that they're getting their data tracked correctly. I'm not 100% on that. That's just from the way that they talk about rapids. That's what I think they're doing with it.
Okay, and yesterday when we were looking for that, you actually went to the Department of Labor website and found that number for us.
Yeah, so if you remember 2 webinars ago, there was an apprenticeship toolkit document that was given out. Inside of that document, there's a link for all the apprenticeable occupations that the Department of Labor offers. And if you follow that link, it'll take you directly to the page where you can look up all of this. So we found machinist. The ONET code is right there on the chart, and so is the rapids code.
Okay. So Travis, as I went through that, was there anything else you'd like to add with that as I went through all that stuff?
Only that I don't think that we've sent this document out to everybody. Unless Helen sent it, I did not. But we'll get it to them.
You mean the document? The document being the standards of apprenticeship?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I have it. You have it. Helen has it. I think we need to send it out to all the participating companies so that they've got it. Okay. But it really is not that difficult to go through. It did take us a little bit of time, but it wasn't hard.
Okay, and as I committed to earlier, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send out the original document that has all the yellow highlighted stuff on it. I will send you out our modified version, the version that we're going to use for LeanWorks, and I'll give you a method that you can do a very quick search and replace, and you can replace the sponsor with your name. And so at that point, it's ready. Then I would recommend that you take an hour and just sit down with it and go through it, make sure you're comfortable with everything. If you have any questions, probably your best bet is to go back to Travis. I would be more than happy to try and help. I'm not nearly as well versed as Travis is. You can also go to Helen, because Helen can go either back to us or she can go directly back to DOL to get answers if we need clarification on anything. Then there would be the rest of the checklist. Let's just go down there. Right, so we have the DOL Standards of Apprenticeship. That's the second from the bottom there. Then I will send out both the yellow copy and the modified copy. Your typical classroom example, whether that be OWATC, SLCC, whatever it is, your on-the-job training form that you're going to use to record the training, a copy of the employment training and administration form, which can be blank or you can put in your information. That's the one you will send with each of your submissions. So when we send it the first time, we're just going to send a blank copy. And then finally, the sponsor data collection sheet, which is just your basic information. I will send out all of these forms by Friday. Our tentative plan is we are planning on the submission on the 19th. And I'll be working with Travis and Helen on that. And if anybody else is ready, we can send them in together. If not, then LeanWorks will be sending one in to start. So we'll be the guinea pigs. We'll see what happens. So does anybody else have any other questions? Or Travis, is there anything else that you?
I don't have anything else unless somebody else has more questions.
Okay, so we're getting down to the wire here. I guess the biggest thing that I learned after the last 3 webinars is this isn't as big a deal as I thought it was going to be in terms of getting this stuff all together. We've kind of, LeanWorks philosophy has been we've tried to kind of minimize the commitment we are making in terms of what we're going to do to the Department of Labor. In reality, we're going to do a lot more at LeanWorks. We just don't want to have the commitment. So we've kind of done sort of a minimum commitment to them so that the program gets approved, even though we expect to do more here. So that's kind of been our philosophy. And if you do that, it's relatively simple to get your submission in and get it going. Always remember you can resubmit at any time. Okay.
Well,
so,
I'd just like to note, Paul, if you don't, that I think you set a really good example, because you guys are showing that you can keep intact your own internal training program that you've already got and kind of limit the regulation, if you will, that the DOL may put on it, by streamlining the apprenticeships program and incorporating it into your internal training. So LeanWorks and their systems basically stays the same, but you meet the DOL requirements and you can offer this apprenticeship. And so I appreciate your work on this. I think that you're setting a really good example for everybody on how they can make this work for them.